What's going on, everybody? It is your boy Zamboni. I'm a musician and astrologer, and it is time to talk about the astrology of the week ahead. As always, I thank you so very much for being here. Thank you for rocking with me day after day, week after week. Thank you so much for sending this video to a friend if you find it helpful and useful. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Thank you for sending me a tip via Venmo, Cash App, PayPal. That's the single best and most direct way to support me and the whole Zamboni Funk enterprise. Thank you so much for doing that. Thank you for going to ZamboniFunk.com, where you can get a Zoom chat reading. We can talk for an hour about whatever's going on in your life and see if we can contextualize it using astrology. You can get a 10-minute reading, which is a video like this, where I'll just sort of talk to the camera and talk about it. And it's much cheaper and quick and easy. You can go to ZamboniFunk.com and you can find music there. I made some music. I'm very proud of it. I would love it if you would go and listen to it. It's for free all over the internet, wherever you like to get your music at. Thank you so much for checking all that stuff out. Let's talk about the astrology of the week ahead. So this week we have, the thing that I was thinking when I was on my way over here and I was like thinking about what I was going to talk about today. The main thing that I like about this week is that it's not all Pluto all the time. It's been so Pluto-y for the last month or whatever, it's just been all the Pluto stuff. And now Pluto is just kind of here, hanging out in Aquarius. A bunch of us still have Pluto like directly on top of a personal planet or something like that. And so people who have early Aquarius placements are still going to be feeling all the Pluto stuff. But by and large, the global majority, we're not going to be seeing 1,000 Pluto aspects this week. So I love to see that. This week, instead, what we have is Uranus all up in everything. So, I like that because Uranus is not either benefic or malefic. Uranus is the planet of sudden changes and surprises and innovation and disruptions, breakups, breakdowns, breakthroughs. Nobody likes a breakup, and nobody likes having a breakdown, right? Breakthroughs kind of can be helpful sometimes, the breakaway, liberation, this kind of thing, right? So we're thinking about major changes here, and humans sort of innately don't really like change very much. We cry about it most times. Even when the change is good, then a lot of times there's tears involved. And so it might not necessarily be fun and easy to deal with Uranus, but at least there is the potential for, one of the things that I've always been saying about Uranus is that there's a lot of potential for innovation that I think is really helpful. It gives us something to work toward. So there's like the major breaks and things changing in such a major way in this sort of historical moment, right? And that is potentially terrifying, especially with all the new Pluto stuff going on out here and the horror of the future and all this, right? But also being because of those major disruptions, then there's opportunity for changes that could be cute in some ways. So Uranus is the star this week for a couple of reasons. One is early on in the week, I think maybe even today, Venus is making a square to Uranus. Venus is in Aquarius and making a square to Uranus in Taurus, which is a Venus ruled sign. So this looks like Venus doing the thinky stuff and working out ways to navigate, especially together, thinking about relationships and cooperation the way that Venus likes to do things, right? Working it out together in the landscape, the new landscape that Uranus and Taurus, this earth sign, this new surprising landscape that has been created there, right? So things are shaped differently than they had been before. And so Venus in Aquarius has an opportunity here to think about how to navigate it together, how to be together in a moment that is characterized by unprecedented isolation and technological innovation, which is super helpful for the things that it's helpful for, but also has a lot of difficulty associated with it, right? Like unscheduled difficulty. And so Venus can be very good for figuring out how to do that togetherness, how to be a community. Especially Venus in Aquarius is very community or societally focused. It wants to think about the big picture in some kind of way. So that looks pretty good for new ideas and this kind of thing, especially earlier on in the week. Now, later on in the week, we also get Mars in Aquarius making a square to Uranus. Now, Mars is going to take that sort of neutral Uranus, right? Neither good nor evil, just like kind of just changing, right? And it's going to take it in a Marsy direction, right? So Mars, we're going to be looking at unexpected Uranus, Mars, aggression, fighting, conflict, like territorial disputes and all of this kind of thing, right? So it does look, we are in the historical moment that we're in, right? So there's plenty of room for battle and war and conflict, and all of that seems to be escalating in ways that are not necessarily predictable. We've been looking at various wars over the past couple of years, and there's been technological innovations like drones and thinking about ways to disrupt communication networks and all of this sort of stuff. All that looks like it wants to be on, especially in the later part of the week. So thinking with that, and then thinking also with the other thing that we've got going on this week, which is Mercury in Pisces. Mercury is hanging out there in Pisces, not doing very well at the Mercury things. That's not how Mercury gets down in Pisces. Now, Mercury in Pisces can be very good for symbol, for metaphor, for like whenever I see a rough looking Mercury in Pisces conjunct Saturn as it currently is, for example, then I like to think about Maya Angelou. That's my favorite, that's my go-to chart example. Maya Angelou, it started out as she was mute for several years. She went through some trauma and didn't know how to talk about it, and so refused to speak for some ridiculous period of time. It was like 6 years or something like that. For a lot of her childhood, she didn't speak words at all. And then from that place, then she went on to be the poet laureate and reciting poems at presidential inauguration and shit like this. There's a major turnaround that can go on there. And this is made possible when we think about Mercury in Pisces. So if you don't speak for 6 years, then you've got a really good opportunity to listen for that period of time, right? Throughout that whole period of time, I have no doubt that she was paying extreme attention, not only to images and whatever was going on around her, but also the way that people were using language and all the rest of that, right? I love to see Mercury in a water sign for cultivating that that kind of intuition, that kind of listening, and there's an impressionability to it, right? Sort of taking outside information and bringing it inside and dealing with it, processing it in some kind of way. So Mercury in a water sign isn't so good for the external communication, for moving things out and saying things properly, or putting the words together. It's not a super prosaic kind of form, but it's very good for the creativity and this kind of thing, right? So to see this going on here and bringing in new information and sort of sitting with that. Mercury is closely conjunct Neptune in Pisces right now. Neptune in Pisces is very much dissolving boundaries and barriers and this sort of stuff, right? So getting into the metaphor, the giant metaphor of it all, it's all the one thing. We all live in the same, we are the earth. We are not living on the earth, but but rather living as the earth, this kind of thing, right? And all of us together. So if that's going on, then there might be good, hive mind stuff. We can think about ideas coming out of the ether in some kind of way. And then if you're listening properly or you're intuiting properly, then you can take some of that and make it useful in some kind of way. So that looks really good here, especially since we've got Mars and Venus doing this kind of innovative situation going on with Uranus for most of the week. So this is a really good time to think your thoughts, especially so, at the same time we've got the moon waning all week. So we've got the last quarter moon this week. And so there's, this is a time when the moon is getting smaller, we're shining less light and trying, this is the end of the moon cycle. And so we've seen a lot of the cycle that has happened already. And now's the time to sort of congeal, put it all together in some kind of way and think about where we're going to be as we move forward into the future. And then at the very end of the week, then we're going to see this new moon in Pisces there as well. And so that looks like it wants to turn a bit of a corner. Thanks so much. I'm out of the time, Zambo.